And our guest is Professor William A. Jacobson. He is a clinical professor of law and director of securities law clinic at the Cornell University Law School. I had the pleasure of interviewing him a few years ago, and his website, where he is the founder of Legal Insurrection. We've gotten a lot of good information from Legal Insurrection because they're covering the BDS movement and the ridiculous war on Israel and exposing the truth that we do. We sometimes get clips, sometimes we read excerpts from articles, etc. But Professor Jacobson, we are thankful that you're here, honored that you're back. And I want to jump right in, and I better play this at the beginning, and hopefully you won't hang up on me, but I know you know it's coming. It is Senator Chuck Schumer responding to the firing of FBI Director James Comey. And, well, he's asking about the timing. Roll it.
Earlier this afternoon, President Trump called me and informed me he was firing Director Comey. I told the President, Mr. President, with all due respect, you are making a big mistake. The first question the administration has to answer is why now? If the administration had objections to the way Director Comey handled the Clinton investigation, they had those objections the minute the President got into office. But they didn't fire him then. Why did it happen today?
So what do you think of the timing, Professor?
Well, I think there's no good timing that would satisfy Chuck Schumer. You could pick any point in time from the day Donald Trump was sworn into office until today. And there's no day when Chuck Schumer would not have objected, would not have said it's political. There's whatever investigations are going on have been going on for months. So there's never a good time to do it. I think the timing was right in that he being President Trump, now has at least his team in place at the Department of Justice. It took a while to get Jeff Sessions confirmed. Now this other person is there, the Deputy Attorney General, who wrote that memo suggesting that Comey should be fired. And so now is the time. It could have been next week or it could have been a week ago, but there is no time that the Democrats would not have objected, which of course is ironic because they've been screaming for Comey to be fired at least since October.
And that they have, absolutely. But it goes to the idea that when there's a vacuum and we don't know something and we want to fill that in with theories because we don't have the rest of the story. And there's so much with the way investigations are done that we just do not know. But there was a report that additional funding was requested by Director Comey a few days before he was fired. And I know that's been refuted by the DOJ, but what do you make of that request? And do you believe that money and those resources will be met in the sense of the alleged request?
Well, first of all, we don't know if it happened, but even if it had, it's irrelevant. Federal agencies are always seeking more money. And people are acting like just because James Comey is gone, the FBI comes to a standstill. Whatever investigation they're doing no longer takes place. And that's a presumption which is simply not true. James Comey, in all likelihood, was not the one doing the investigation. People were reporting their investigation to him. The fact that he's gone does not stop those people from continuing to investigate. So the entire premise that terminating Comey terminates the investigation is faulty. So this is just layer upon layer of what the Democrats are doing to come up with excuses. And let's say there had been a request for additional funding 4 days ago. So what? That funding may still be provided. That request doesn't disappear just because James Comey is fired. So none of these excuses we're hearing really are relevant to the issue, which is that he was not properly performing his job. The Democrats have been screaming for him to be fired, virtually every former attorney general has said he acted improperly by usurping the role of the Department of Justice prosecutors. He made himself a media celebrity. Everybody's waiting on what is the next thing that James Comey is going to say. And it's like the old Kremlinologists, that the people who used to watch the Soviet leadership, and if they had one expression on their face, people would read things into it. And that's how it became with James Comey. It was what did he say? How did he say it? What was his tone of voice? What was his expression? It's like the whole political arena was being run by the director of the FBI, and that's not the role of the director of the FBI. So it was long past time for him to go. Hopefully they'll find somebody who's a serious investigator or former prosecutor, whoever it happens to be. But he had become too much of a media celebrity, and he was driving the news cycle way too much.
Speaking to the substance that you mentioned on the decision, and you posted this and you reposted it, you had posted it at the time back in July of 2016, when this is what is cited by Deputy Rod Rosenstein in the memo, and you reference the other attorney generals that I believe he references in that memo. And so I want to play just a montage of that and get your thoughts, because again, we want to address the substance, and this is what's being really pointed to. Let's roll that.
From the group of 30,000 emails returned to the State Department in 2014, 110 emails in 52 email chains have been determined by the owning agency to contain classified information at the time they were sent or received. 8 of those chains contained information that was top secret at the time they were sent. 36 of those chains contained secret information at the time, and 8 contained confidential information at the time. Separate from those, about 2,000 additional emails were up-classified to make them confidential. None of these emails should have been on any kind of unclassified system, but their presence is especially concerning because all of these emails were housed on unclassified personal servers, not even supported by full-time security staff, like those found at agencies and departments of the United States government, or even with a commercial email service like Gmail.
Thanks. A shout out to Sean Hannity's program on Fox, because we got a clip of that montage. We added the sound effects when the breaks were there, just FYI. So, Professor Jacobson, teach us a lesson on what James Comey did at the time that was not right, was wrong. And I know people have written about this. We've talked to Andrew C. McCarthy. We've talked to a whole host of others. But he seemingly, I remember it, he laid out the case, and then, which if you compare to the law, or the statute, you'd say, okay, he made the case, and then he took an extra step in saying that they're not going to prosecute or recommend prosecution. Your thoughts on this, and how does this work legally?
Well, I think that the primary thing he did wrong was, first of all, holding the press conference. That's very unusual. The FBI director doesn't normally hold a press conference like that and essentially try somebody in the media. And he did a very effective job. I remember watching it live. We were covering it live at the website. And for the first 14 minutes or whatever the exact time was, it was, oh my goodness, he's going to announce that he's recommending prosecution. This is unbelievable. He has just filleted Hillary in public.
You actually wrote that at the time, did you not? You actually wrote about the minutes that he made making the case, if I'm not mistaken, sir, and talked about this. Yeah, because it was great coverage. Keep going. I apologize. Keep going.
That's all right. I think it was. And then at the very end, I think he said the word but. And as soon as he said that word, I knew what was coming. But then, so whether he said the memo that you talked about from Rod Rosenstein says it was improper for him to even have that press conference. But he did it. But then he compounded the error by essentially usurping the prosecutors at the Department of Justice. They are the ones who make the decision whether or not to prosecute. The FBI director might make a recommendation, but does not make that decision. And when he announced it with all the cameras there, he effectively made the decision. Now, it is true that Loretta Lynch herself, the Attorney General at the time, had become tainted because of her private meeting in an airplane with Bill Clinton. So maybe she couldn't be involved, but she's not the only one at the Department of Justice. And the standard that Comey announced was that no reasonable federal prosecutor or no reasonable prosecutor would pursue this case, even though there might be a reason to pursue it. That's not his decision. Let the prosecutors make that decision. But once he announced it publicly, the die had been cast. And so he compounded it multiple times. He usurped the role that others have in the process, and he made himself and he did it in a highly political atmosphere at a time of intense scrutiny. So at every level, what he did was wrong, regardless of what his decision was. And so that's what he did wrong. He also, I've seen a lot of people, and I don't hold myself out as an expert on the statutes that would be governing, but I know Andy McCarthy and a lot of other people have said that the reason he gave why no prosecutor would pursue it was that Hillary essentially didn't mean to do bad things. She didn't mean to violate the law. And a lot of people said that's simply not part of the standard. There was such gross negligence. And he laid out that gross negligence in what she did and how shoddy she was and how sloppy she was and how she knew better. I mean, she was the president's wife. She was the Secretary of State. She knows the protocols for these sort of things. That he made a very effective case that she at least was grossly negligent.
So now we have the substance, the reason given. We'll come back to the timing question. We're going to go overtime with the professor, and I know you all are absolutely saying yes, thank you. Professor William A. Jacobson, he is the founder of Legal Insurrection and a law school professor at Cornell's School of Law. So we'll continue. Crane Durham's Nothing But Truth, AFR. And we continue our conversation with the professor. He's a law professor at Cornell University. He's the founder of Legal Insurrection, legalinsurrection.com. Check it out. And his name is Professor William A. Jacobson. And Professor Jacobson, you were just detailing the substance of the reason behind the firing of Director Comey. And I opened up with Chuck Schumer asking about the timing. And so now we have the substance, which is a substance-wise with Rod Rosenstein making the case. You have the timing question again. Why not do it when he initially took office? When President Trump took office? Why didn't he fire him? And do you believe perhaps that he had to wait for Rosenstein's review? And that only came, I believe he was confirmed on the 26th of April. I'm not sure on the exact of the debate on the date, but is that part of it? And is that plausible to you?
It's completely plausible. And one of the things the Democrats have done effectively is they have slowed down Trump's appointment nomination. They can't stop them because they don't have the numbers to stop them, because Harry Reid in 2013 removed the filibuster for all nominees other than the Supreme Court. And that, of course, is now gone. But so the point is they can't stop, but they can slow things down. The Senate has all these crazy rules about how long people get to speak and how long you have to wait on different things. So the Democrats have effectively slowed down Trump's stocking the administration with his own people. And so everything is moving more slowly. And I certainly can understand why Trump would want, and Jeff Sessions would want, a review of Comey. But again, getting back to the issue, there is no time that he could not make the argument it's political. And so either James Comey can never be fired, which is not the law, it's not the position that he has, he serves at the pleasure of the president, or there is going to come a time when he gets fired. And so it's not a question of whether Donald Trump had the right, and I don't think the timing issue is significant at all. Can you imagine if he had fired Comey the day he was inaugurated or the next day? The headlines would be screaming. His first act in office was to remove the person investigating him. So there's no good time to have done it. Could it have been done earlier? Maybe. Could it have been done later? Maybe. Those are judgment calls that the executive branch gets to make for an FBI director, and I see no issue with it now.
Now the questions have become the FBI was getting close, and now we have this kind of the idea that they're getting close, so he fired them. And how did I heard it earlier on the show, they beheaded the investigatory arm of the Justice Department that was getting close to him. And you said in our first segment, well, these investigations are continuing. There are 3 investigations, and I assume that we have, stepping in the place of the director, former Comey, we have McCabe, but there are concerns about him as well, as I understand.
Well, the whole issue is that this whatever investigation was going on yesterday is going on today and will go on tomorrow. There's no reason to think that it has been interrupted because James Comey is no longer there. And again, the issue is he either can never be fired or there's no good point at which to fire him. Any argument made that it's a bad time today could have been made a week ago or 3 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago. With all the leaks that have been coming out of the government, none of which have been substantiated about Trump associates in Russia, et cetera, there's no good time. So I just think this is a fictitious issue. It is true. James Comey maybe should have been fired a month or 2 ago. But to paraphrase Hillary Clinton, what difference would that have made to the Democratic Party reaction? It would have made no difference to that.
And the subpoenas that reportedly went out to, I believe, General Flynn's associates are still there. Everything is continuing. So, again, we come back to this idea. I truly want to separate the politics and the spin one way or another because it's the nature of the beast, if you will, that we are dealing with in the sense of the political system and everything else. But bottom line, what is ongoing continues to continue. It continues. And if people are seeking justice in these, but we're getting these hysterical reactions from those on the left. Now, we're used to this so often. I mean, anytime you want to deal with health care and you say, hey, government's not going to provide that, that doesn't mean we don't want it done, but government's role is not there. They say you want to kill children or the elderly, which is obviously that's what you do when you don't have substance. But we're getting a lot of this. We even get it from people that are lawyers, professors. Jeffrey Toobin on CNN. Here's an excerpt. And, Professor, one of the things we love to do here is to say, what if Professor Jacobson was on this panel and Jeffrey Toobin, CNN, says this? Roll it.
Can we point out that the emperor is not wearing any clothes? This memo from Rod Rosenstein says that James Comey was fired for being too mean to Hillary Clinton. Does anyone believe that? Could anyone believe that? I mean, it's just absurd. I mean, suddenly, here it is in May of 2017 that he's being fired for a press conference that he held in July of 2016? I mean, this is just the most preposterous pretext. This is an investigator who is investigating the White House, and he was just fired by the White House. This doesn't happen in the United States, except on October 20th, 1973, when Richard Nixon fired Archibald Cox. And if anyone thinks that a new FBI director is going to come in and the agency will just take over and continue their investigation as if this had never happened, that's not how it works. Jeffrey, they will put in a stooge who will shut down this investigation. Well, Jeffrey, they are in charge. The political people are in charge of the FBI, not the street agents. The street agents do what they're told. And now Donald Trump will put in maybe Chris Christie, someone who will do his bidding.
CNN's senior legal analyst, Jeffrey Toobin, to which the founder of Legal Insurrection, Cornell Law School law professor at Cornell University, William A. Jacobson, you say what?
I say, who elected James Comey? James Comey is not the government. James Comey serves the president. James Comey has no perpetual employment, and it's not that James Comey was too mean to Hillary Clinton. And Jeffrey Toobin has become a caricature of perpetual liberal outrage and legal analysts on TV. It's not accurate for him to say that Comey was fired because he was mean to Hillary Clinton. Comey was fired because almost every former attorney general and the Justice Department itself concluded correctly that he acted improperly in the way he handled the email investigation of Hillary Clinton. And it's not that he was too mean to her. It's all the reasons I've just explained, how he stepped out of the role that the FBI director has, how he usurped the authority of the prosecutors in the Justice Department, how he made himself a media phenomenon, how he, ran to the cameras whenever possible. He did all the things an FBI director is not supposed to do, and that's why he was finally fired. And Donald Trump finally acceded, in a sense, to the demands of Democrats to get rid of Comey. So I think Jeffrey Toobin has no credibility. He's, become the person of perpetual outrage when it comes to things related to Donald Trump. I think that the Rosenstein memo, which is reprinted many places, lays out a very persuasive case that, Comey should have been fired, and maybe it should have been sooner. But the Democrats have slowed things down a bit.
And again, it goes to the appointment and that timeline. And again, when we're focusing on this issue, there are a lot of other issues. We hit them every night in the sense that, like the question of the 18 days, there's questions on that with Flynn. I get all that, and I'll continue to ask. But when it comes to this issue, and I look at the timeline, and I look at the response, now, people didn't seem to be prepared for it, and the way it was done, and also the way it was done from reports was awful, quite frankly. But that aside, what we deal with is the removal of a FBI director and the questions surrounding that. But as you keep pointing out, you say, here's the substance of why he was removed, and here's the timeline, and here's how Rod Rosenstein came in and produced this document, this memo, which really lays it out substantively, questions that you have asked in the past over illegal insurrection as the story was developing during that press conference in last July in 2016. And then we go to the calls for the special prosecutor, a need for a special prosecutor. You have 3 investigations that are ongoing. Do you foresee a need for a special prosecutor in light of the Comey firing? Why would we need one right now?
I'm not sure why one would be needed, but I think there's a misconception there. If what people want is transparency, if what they want are facts to come out for the public to be informed as opposed to speculation and rumors, a special prosecutor is going to shut down any transparency. There will be nothing until the end of the investigation, which could be a year from now or 2 years from now, that will get told to Congress or other things. So that's not going to solve any problem. And I understand Trump's frustration. He has been the target of a weak campaign, smear campaign over the supposed Russian connection, where everybody who's testified in Congress has said they're unaware of any collusion that went on. And Senator Dianne Feinstein from California, a Democrat who's on the Senate Intelligence Committee, about a week ago, was part of a group of senators who were briefed by the CIA at CIA headquarters on what they've been investigating. And she was asked on CNN by Wolf Blitzer, is there, to your knowledge, any evidence of collusion between the Trump campaign and the Russians? And her answer was, not as of this time. So pretty definitive. So I understand Trump's frustration.
Yeah, but what about the fact that with the Clapper statement and the addendum, it seemed from Yates in regard to the ongoing investigation at the FBI to say that there is no evidence of collusion, and not that this investigation can say, yes, there is collusion, but referencing that perhaps we don't know the whole story, and that's part of this. Again, the ongoing investigation with the FBI that Yates cited.
Well, we don't know what's going on. There's so much speculation here, and people appear before Congress and then they say, well, I can't talk about that in a non-classified setting. And therefore, that just feeds the rumor mill. Oh, if they can't talk about it, there must be something bad there. So I think people need to stop hyperventilating. There is no constitutional crisis here. The FBI director, the FBI is still intact. The Justice Department is still intact. The normal processes are still intact. I mean, for goodness sake, who is more political as attorney generals than the people Obama had in there, Eric Holder and Loretta Lynch? The whole reason Comey said he had to do these unusual things is because Barack Obama's attorney general, Loretta Lynch, who, by the way, was a law school classmate of mine, had a secret meeting with the husband of a target of an investigation, namely Bill Clinton, and didn't tell anybody about it until it leaked out. A reporter saw it, somebody spotted them, and she was asked at a press conference. She never announced that had taken place. So we have had a politicized Justice Department for 8 years. And all of a sudden, the media and the Democrats have discovered that politics interplays with the Justice Department. It's just a little too convenient for me. And I think people should stop hyperventilating. The facts will eventually come out. The FBI will conclude its investigation. The NSA and the CIA will conclude whatever it is they're gathering. And eventually, a prosecutor, probably a career prosecutor, will make a decision or take it to a grand jury. And there'll either be indictments and prosecution or there won't be. But this notion that it all has to take place right now, it all has to take place in public, is simply not the standard that's been applied in the past.
And how we got here, which is very interesting that you reference that point, because everybody points to that press conference where Comey overstepped. But the reasoning behind the overstep was that meeting on the tarmac that tainted your former law school classmate, Loretta Lynch, and was only reported after the fact. And I believe no notes were taken and a whole thing. So that you're coming out of that and the concern. And from what I gather, just so that I understand this, the investigations will go forward. There's no evidence that this is going to impact the investigation to the negative to say that people will stop in light of those things, in light of what we know. That's the accusation immediately. Oh, now you decapitated the investigation. But as I believe Sarah Huckabee spoke to, and I'm blanking on her last name, my apologies, Professor. Sanders, yes, said those will be ongoing. And obviously that's the part of it. And again, part of this is to get your opinion as a legal analyst and an expert in the law and understanding this, plus your background in covering these events over Legal Insurrection, legalinsurrection.com. I've enjoyed it so much, I forgot about the clock. Professor, we went double overtime, and we appreciate it, and we'll hope you come back on the program. Will you do that?
I look forward to it.
Hey, thank you, my friend. William Jacobson, Professor William Jacobson, law professor at Cornell.